What's up, everybody? Welcome to Shared Screens Elite Four, the only Pokemon exclusive show here on the Shared Screens Podcasting Network. And while we are in Elite Four today, we have a very special guest in replacement for Alec. We have one Tucker Hazell from Backlog Banter.
Absolutely my first time talking about Pokemon ever. You're getting my raw, unfiltered thoughts. Guys, I've never talked about Pokemon before.
I've never heard you talk about Pokemon ever. Not even a single time. I didn't know you liked the games even.
I keep it a secret.
I was literally gonna.
I thought you pronounced it Pokemon, actually.
I used to do that ironically. I was literally gonna open the podcast saying like, I love having Tucker on for Pokemon stuff. So I'm glad I didn't say that.
Yes, of course. If you watched us before, Tucker has been on a lot of our Pokemon content, which we love. And today we're gonna hear about Tucker's dream Pokemon game. But before that, like always with the Road to Victory episodes, we are gonna start with some ice breakers. So Tucker, first for you. Just give us a little bit about your history with the Pokemon franchise, you know, what regions you liked, what gen you started with, what gen is your favorite, if that's not necessarily the same. Just give us kind of like the Tucker Pokemon trainer profile of like what you love about this franchise.
Yeah, I feel like I'm going to bring a unique perspective to this because I find that my Pokemon opinions are not the ones held by the majority of people, and we will get into that specifically when I'm describing my ideal Pokemon game, because it's gonna be a tricky dick. But I'm 23 years old, and so that's
Jesus Christ. No, you're not. Really?
He's a baby.
I'm a tiny little bastard. And I started with Pokemon Pearl, a Red DS Lite and Pokemon Pearl. Was my very first video game. I was
how old were you when Pokemon Pearl?
When that game came out?
I was in fucking high school.
I was in like late elementary, early middle school.
Frankly,
I think. See, for me,
I'm just gonna go wither up and die now. I think it's what I'm gonna do.
There's no any, Chris. Could be any day now.
Diamond and Pearl came out in like the last year of elementary school, so then Platinum came out in like middle school for me.
Sure.
Yeah. So I started with Pearl, and then. Black and White was like the first video game I remember hearing about before it came out, because here's a very interesting story. I had a babysitter who was a little bit older than me who taught me how to find information about Black and White before it was like widely known. And so I, for years in elementary school, was learning the Unova Pokemon by their Japanese names because cool. I didn't have any concept of that they were going to be translated or changed because I was 9 or whatever.
Yeah, I was about to say, I'm trying to do the math. Are you saying that like there was a 9-year-old kid looking up Coral leaks?
Yeah, basically. Well, I don't think it was Coral. I mean, I have no idea. It was such a long time ago. But I was teaching my friends on the playground new Pokemon that had not been revealed yet and wouldn't be for another 2 years.
That's so cool.
And it was a really cool experience for me. So Pokemon is very integral, and I think that Pokemon Black was like the first video game I ever bought for myself. And of course, somewhere in there you got Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Of course, I think we all were the perfect age to have a Pokewalker and bring that to school. And I have a lot of nostalgia for that DS generation of Pokemon games, as I'm sure we all do, as I think those games have kind of reached the apex of nostalgia for Pokemon fans. Black and White and Gen 4 and Heart Gold and Soul Silver are the ones that people talk about the most, like, oh dude, that was the peak, but it isn't until the 3DS generations 6 and 7 that, I mean, obviously I love Pokemon. that was Diamond and Pearl. The Diamond and Pearl soundtrack is like one of my most nostalgic things ever, but Generation 6 and 7 are my favorites in the franchise, and by a significant margin. And those were the ones that I really, really, really got into in terms of trading with my friends and following the news. And I made YouTube videos about the leaks of Sun and Moon and, like, you know, following all that stuff. And so I have a distinct perspective in that I believe the 3DS Pokemon games are the best of the series, and that is not something you hear particularly often.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people love them. I never hear best, though, so you have a point. So
yeah,
Sun and Moon I hear more love for than X and Y, but we talked about so much about how like X and Y were screwed over by not getting another version, whether it be a sequel or a third version.
It just felt like that wasn't, like, that cycle wasn't done before Sun and Moon came out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it truly felt like, I mean, it's not. I don't even think like it's a conspiracy. They were so obviously working towards a Pokemon Z, like the anime subtitle Zygarde.
Yes.
I remember
We're getting it now, kind of maybe with the
it almost feels like Legends is kind of circling back, right? Like,
yeah. I worked at GameStop, or I started there around like 2015, and it must be 2016, but before like Sun and Moon was announced. I had to stay late one day to do what at GameStop is called the marketing, which is like when you change all the signs, you know, for the next day of like what games are being released, come out, what's on the this or whatever, and like they send you like a little corporate map of like here in this part of the store, put these thing. But there was like one said next, you know, in the left row, put Pokemon X. I was like, all right, and then next to that, put Pokemon Z, and I was like, wait, did I fucking miss something? And I showed it to like my coworker, and we're like going back and forth. He goes, "I just think that was a typo that nobody understood what the gravity of that typo was."
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I wonder how widely that was distributed to GameStop stores. I mean, there's really no way to find that out. But did you ever talk to people that worked at other stores and see if they got the same thing? Maybe it was just your manager, or maybe it came from corporate. Who the hell knows?
It came from corporate, but the thing with it is like they send that to the stores based off like the shape of your store, shape and size. So like the two closest GameStops to the one I worked at were very different, and so like they wouldn't have necessarily had the same one, and so I don't know if that would have been fixed or whatnot.
Did it look like it was crudely done with the Sharpie? No, I'm just kidding. But
no, dude, it was typed. Like this was legit.
But I think actually we make a point about that generation not getting the upgrade that so many of the previous generations especially benefited from, of people I think rightfully criticize the base Gen 4 games of being like, yeah, they're slow and the Pokedex sucks, and like there's no like the game is just weirdly balanced, and then you get Platinum, like, okay, that's what this was.
We smoothed some things out,
and same thing with Emerald and Crystal. Like, people love those games, and Black and White 2 are kind of their own thing, and actually I think that's maybe one of the most interesting combinations of that. But you can easily imagine a much stronger and more complete Gen 6, because you can feel where there are things that need to be changed.
There are, like, if I remember correctly, there's like sections of the water that like is so clearly blocked. And I remember like Diamond and Pearl, there would be like a section of that, but in Platinum, no, now you can go into this water. Like there's caves you couldn't access, and of course there's like the power plant.
Yeah, and the train station on the east side. Yeah, and so I think I think that is something that people don't really take into consideration when comparing Gen 6, especially X and Y as those base games, to other generations, is that they never had the benefit of getting the extra year and a half of polish that basically every previous generation had. And so not that that really means anything, but I feel like the understanding has to be there of like, look, yeah, the train station doesn't go anywhere and the power plant doesn't work, but that happened in every other previous Pokemon game, but then those things were fixed, but you never think about the fact they were fixed, because when you think about Gen 4, you think about Platinum. Like there are these holes there, and in like, it's not technically a one-to-one comparison, but despite all that, though Gen 6 and 7 did get a refresh. It's 2 games. That's a whole thing as well. But those are my personal favorites, and we can talk about why.
Understood. And now for the icebreaker for everyone, what I was going to ask is, what is your favorite Pokemon spinoff? So Tucker, will continue with you.
No, I've been talking a lot. Let's go around the horn.
All right.
Let me do it.
Favorite, or like whether it be a whole series, an individual one, or like, you know, just a Pokemon spinoff that's near dear to your heart. I mean, Chris, how about you? Let's start there then. Is Chris muted?
I was muted. That
I thought he was just speechless.
I just started going, and then I went, whoops.
When you talked, it kind of looked like you were just going like this. I was like, oh, this dude's about to like cook. And I was like, no, he's just muted.
So, anyway. Favorite one, I'm gonna, unless we're kind of, is Go technically a spinoff?
Yeah,
because Go is probably like my first answer. But if you want to dig a little deeper, because I don't think we need to go over the reasons that Go is awesome. We all know why Pokemon Go is great. So I'm going to hit you with the deep cut. Did you guys ever play Pokemon Conquest?
Yeah. Yeah,
I've played like the
I missed
first
that
couple
one.
levels of it, but
I've
I
heard
know
good
what
things.
it is.
it's a Fire Emblem type game with Pokemon characters.
Yeah, so it was a crossover with an actual like other Japanese tactical game that I cannot remember the name of because Nobunaga's Ambition, that was the name of it. And so it has Nobunaga characters with Pokemon, and
I didn't know that at all.
And it plays like if you've ever played like Final Fantasy Tactics, that's kind of that kind of game. And it genuinely it was extremely slept on. I think it released on the DS. I want to say around the time of Black and White. It would have been like that. Yeah, it would have been that gen. Yeah. Game's fucking awesome. Unfortunately, like really the only way to play it is either own a DS or emulate it. These days, it never got a sequel. It was really, really slept on. But if you're into those kind of like tactics RPGs, excellent game.
Yeah,
really cool art style.
I need to go back and actually like play it. I've like sampled it, but I need to. Like,
I still have my copy. I revisited it last year, and it holds up, man. It's a good ass game overall. Like genuinely
nice.
I didn't know it was like a genuine crossover.
Yeah. So all of the trainers in the game are characters from what'd you say it was called? Nobunaga's Ambition. It was a series I never heard of before. I guess it's a big like tactics game in Japan.
On the Wikipedia page, it says that it's in Japan. The title is Pokemon plus Nobunaga's Ambition.
Cool.
Wow,
I didn't know that either.
I had no idea. That's like I knew this game existed and I knew it was like a tactical game.
So,
like,
so you
literally all I knew.
Tucker, you mentioned earlier, like learning the names of Gen 5 Pokemon like before they come out. I actually I have a like a flash card for my DS, an R4 card, and I found a ROM of the game before it had its American release, and somebody had made a patch that you could add to this ROM that translated it. It translated it incredibly poorly, but I did play it before it came out in the US, and then I went and bought like an actual copy, and I was like, wow, the writing is completely different than that ROM that I played.
Who would have thought?
I did the same
Google
thing
Translate.
I did the same thing with Black 2 and White 2. Like generally just
that time.
Better, but still not perfect.
Sure. Fair enough.
How about you, Austin?
Does Arceus count? We count Arceus as a genuine spinoff?
No, that's mainline. That is considered mainline.
All right. I think there are arguments to have with that, but how about Stadium? How about Stadium? We're gonna talk about Stadium a little bit.
Yeah,
that counts.
Stadium was I never owned a 64, so I would go to my friend Zoe's house. Yes, I had a friend who was a girl who I hung out with when I was like 8 years old. Hard to believe, right? But we would play Pokemon Stadium, and then we would just battle each other. And I don't think she ever caught on that I like knew what she was going to do before she would do it, and I'd beat her every time. I would never let her win. Such a great core memory for me. But we played through that game like I don't know how many times, but too many times. And then when Pokemon Stadium 2 came around, we were no longer friends. So I've only barely touched Stadium 2.
Is there a
but
story
Stadium
there?
1, no. It's just I don't know. We were like we probably had similar friends with our parents or whatever. I mean, and so I would go over to her house and hang out, and then we would just be downstairs playing on the N64 or whatever. And then we just
I still have
that
my
you no
original copy
longer
of Stadium
have.
somewhere.
Yeah, it's weird, but yeah, I never owned a 64, so that she was like the only genuine, I guess, like environment that had one. So I've only played that. I've played Mario 64. I played Pokemon Stadium, a few other ones, the Mario Kart, but that was pretty much all we did. And, that's my core memory for Stadium.
A couple buddies of mine still have like a CRT and N64, so we still like to put a few back and challenge each other in the mini games. And that they're still unrivaled, man. The mini games in Pokemon Stadium are top tier.
Pokemon Stadium for me is so intrinsically tied with me and my cousins hanging out together. And then like the mini games, like not only are they goated, like my sister has played the Pokemon Stadium mini games and like does not know Pokemon all that well. You know what I mean?
Sorry,
like,
excuse me for 1 second.
No, all good. But like it surpasses like the mini games in particular, like transcend just Pokemon. Like they kind of just become mascots in that moment, and it's like a mini game collection. But like me and my cousin battling each other with the shitty rental Pokemon, so you try a different team every time, and so you do what you can. But
I never liked that concept.
Yeah,
I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, the rental Pokemon's tough because it's like, man,
because they're all poopy. I mean, the whole concept was, and I did get to play it this way, to whereas if you had the attachment went into the thing, you transfer your Pokemon from red, blue, and yellow, right? And I did do that, and that was really, really fun. It even had like this like an early iteration of the Game Boy Player to where you could play Red, Blue, and Yellow like on your TV using the
Yeah.
on the N64, and I did that a bunch as a kid.
Mhm.
That was really cool.
I also just want to
Fighting
shout
game?
out because I only barely played it, but the Gale of Darkness on the GameCube.
Yeah. Pokemon
Yeah,
That
it was
was just-
Shadow Lugia.
Yeah,
Very
that was
funny
just
that that game's called Pokemon XD.
it was just
Context in the modern
it was just
day.
like an enigma of a Pokemon game, and I was like, this
Yeah.
is just weird.
really weird.
I played kind of a little past the opening of Coliseum like 9
Sure.
years ago, trying to just give it
I still have my
a
copy of
shot.
that game too.
The old college try.
And Tucker, what about you with Pokemon spin-offs?
Hey, you Pikachu! I bet.
I can't say I've ever played Hey You Pikachu.
Okay,
Don't ever, please don't.
There was a split second where I was where Tucker was gonna be like, I don't think I've ever heard of Hey You.
I do. He's young enough to where he's like, "What is that?"
Now, you guys don't know me specifically well, but I hope I present myself enough as a guy that knows a lot about video game history to the point where I would have heard of Hey You Pikachu.
At least heard of it. Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
take this as an insult.
But I take
I
it
was gonna
more
say,
like
Chris, did you hear that? He was insulted.
I take
Did you
it
hear
more
that?
like Pokemon trying to bury that game, because like I did see the commercial for that at like 5 years old and was like, this is the peak of technology,
Yeah.
and then never afforded it. But like as an adult, I was like, oh, it sucked. That's hilarious.
I was saying, didn't it review really bad?
There was like
I-
3 things you could tell
The
Pikachu to do.
N64 console that I owned was the Pikachu edition, where his foot
Oh,
was the
sure.
reset
Wow,
button,
yeah.
his
Mhm.
cheeks lit
That's
up.
still
and
cool.
And it
I stand by that's cool.
And it
Yeah.
came packaged with Hey You Pikachu, and for like a
course
month,
it
that was like that and Episode 1 Racer were like the only games I owned. And
Now, we wanna
man, let me
talk
tell you,
about-
Pikachu, tough game, dude.
If we want to talk
The
about
Dark Souls
things
of his
you might
kind,
not
or
have
his
heard
time.
of, have
Yeah.
you guys heard of Pokemon Team Turbo?
I have
No.
actually.
Is that one of the Japanese arcade games?
Pokemon Team Turbo is a PC racing game
Mm.
that is just so gone from history. But
I've
my
heard
friend-
about some of the PC games, but I never heard of a racing.
Sure. It sounds
Yeah,
vaguely familiar, but probably
it's,
not.
It's kind of like Pokemon Dash, but it's
Hmm.
just a bad game that was on PC
Oh.
with like Gen 3 Pokemon. My friend sent me a picture of it, and I'm like, that doesn't look real. Looks fake.
Yeah, I had to look it up. It looks like a Flash game. They're in like little like Pokeball
Absolutely.
tops. I remember this
Yep.
shit, dude. Holy cow.
Yeah, now we want to talk about deep cuts. Yeah, I know Hey You Pikachu, but you know Pokemon Team Turbo. No, that
Gotcha,
is not
he
a game
gotcha.
I played, so I can't comment on its quality. Though I can comment on its quality insofar as I'm sure it's not good. I'm positive it is not fun. To play.
It doesn't look good.
Completely unrelated. If we're gonna bring back a kart racer, have you all played Motor Combat? It was on like Mortal Kombat Armageddon.
Oh, like
Actually,
side mode?
genuinely fun. I love that game.
Motor
Anyway,
Combat.
Motor Combat. It's honestly like one of my favorite kart racers ever.
I had
and
the
like
PS
most people don't know it exists.
I had the PSP version, which was Unchained, and so I got Mortal Kombat Chess instead.
Oh, I didn't know they did that
Yay.
like a thing. That's weird.
It was part of Armageddon.
Yeah. Anyway,
This
Now-
is
sorry.
such. I'm looking at gameplay now, and this is such a weird game.
Yep.
The Motor Combat.
No.
Oh.
Pokemon Team Turbo. Like this looks
Yeah, fuck
like
that.
the Pokeathlon before the Pokeathlon.
Okay.
Also, shout out to Pokemon Dash too. I did also have that game. It's terrible.
That is a very bad game. Yes,
Yeah, it was really
I
bad.
do not like that game.
This
There is a whole
Pokemon's-
era of like forgotten early generation DS games that are just god awful.
Yeah.
That are just some of the worst touch.
There's a reason they've been
touchscreen only
forgotten.
things.
Anyone here a Mystery Dungeon guy?
I've
No?
tried so many times.
Never
I
clicked for
had
me.
Explorers of Sky when I was a kid, but I don't know. It's just the gameplay. I like the little characters.
Yeah,
Um,
my brother played the crap out of them. My favorite thing that came out of Mystery Dungeon was in Nintendo Power at the time they had like a little like monthly manga, like 5-part like manga series for the first one where the main
Oh yes,
character was
yes.
Torchic.
Where
And
there
I
was-
li-
there
I
was a
liked that a
kid
lot.
That was turned into a Torchic.
Yeah.
that was the fun
Whoa.
of that game. Is that that
Yeah.
manga is a kid was turned into a Torchic, and it was like him. He was friends with a I don't know Squirtle or a Poochyena. I don't know. What it was.
Isn't that the like? Is the whole thing
It's
in
the plot
every
of the
Mystery
first
Dungeon game that you turned into a Pokemon?
Yeah, I don't know
the-
if that's true for.
I don't know
all
if it's everyone, but the original ones were, yeah. The red and blue.
Man, in my luck, I'd be turned to like a Metapod or something. I'm like, God damn it.
Which and they weren't even
I feel
different
like for you,
versions.
that's
it was
a
just like
specific
red
type of
on the
torture.
DS and blue on the Game Boy Advance, I think is what it was.
Yeah, and then the red cover is them looking into the hole of the blue cover.
It's clever.
Yeah.
Very clever. But you have to be in the know to know that it's clever. Otherwise, it's like, yeah, it's a little clever.
Yeah, just like it's just art.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
But if I'm to give my answer for
Oh, yes.
my spinoff, I'm going to go with the Ranger series, and specifically Guardians of Almia, which is the second one. Now, I actually played through all 3 of the Pokemon Ranger games, and they're the only Pokemon spin-offs that I've put like a significant amount of time into, other than Pokemon Go, which we talked about is a little bit separate.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
But the Ranger games are very interesting because the first one is not that good. It's an interesting idea, but
yeah, I played it last year.
The problem is you have to do the entire battle in one loop, and you can't mess it up, or you got to restart the entire thing. And luckily, they figured out for the other 2 that's not fun, and so it'll just go down slowly every time. You don't know how you got to do it in one loop. But I remember playing Guardians of Almia, which is the second one. I'd be like, yeah, this is pretty cool, and then eventually going back and playing the first game, like, what the heck? I don't even remember how I beat that. To be completely honest, it's just so frustrating.
So I you might remember, Tucker, because I think you tweeted about it to me when I was like looking to play the Ranger games and just wondering like, so I have played the first one. I've put a couple hours into the second one, and I did it on my, my Pokeball 2DS, which I've showed off many times on the show. Do you know how easy it is to hack your 3DS? It's very easy, guys.
It's very easy.
They're real easy. But I had like just read so many things about like, oh, that Salamence and that Charizard destroyed my bottom screen that I bought like multiple screen protectors on Amazon for the 2DS XL. Yeah.
My brother destroyed his first DS Lite playing Ranger. Yeah.
I also ordered because the fucking stylus is so small and most games don't even use it. So I bought like an extendable one.
Oh, sure.
Got a wand.
Not like that long. It was like this, but at one point I was using my like Microsoft Surface Pen, which has a magnet in it. And so like I'd do it, be like, oh, okay, wonderful. And then I'd like try to obviously like didn't slip in anywhere. So like I'd hold in the back of my finger, and then sometimes the magnet would cause the 2DS to like go black. And I was like, oh, I shouldn't put it back there.
That's a bad idea.
Yeah, no, it only happened like a couple times. We're good, man.
Are we? I don't know that's true.
Fine. But no, the Ranger series I really liked, even though I've only played the first one. I like the lore of the idea of what a Ranger is. I think they're like the ones that make the most sense, because like the anime pushes on collecting and performing and coordinating a lot, which are like other careers. I think that would be interesting to like see Pokemon expand in more than just become the very best and go battle late. You know what I mean? Rangers are one where I'm like, that could really be like, if they really fleshed out more, I think much more interesting, and like there's stuff to do there.
I agree, but I think that it would probably not work in the way that the games were designed initially. I think a game built in the world of Pokemon Ranger, which is of course the Pokemon world, but the Ranger characters are so backgrounded, like they really barely show up in other things, except for the Manaphy movie. If you remember, there is a main side character in that movie that is a Pokemon Ranger.
Because the only way to get Manaphy was Pokemon Ranger.
I was going to say, I believe that was some cross promotion going on there, if I remember correctly.
There's a couple episodes, I think, in the Hoenn series where you get a Pokemon Ranger here there. But like, no, I truly think that if they were to bring it back, I would want them to almost do like a soft reboot / retcon to it. Not even because of like the inward lore stuff, because I feel that could always be like, oh no, Rangers are basically cops now, and we have stations all over.
No one knows the Ranger lore. You're gonna be okay if you don't touch on it.
Exactly. I just mean like, you could keep having them use their stylus, but don't make me like shred my joystick on my Joy-Con.
Exactly. Make it some sort of action thing where you have combos that are using the little top thing that they have, but you're not drawing circles on your Switch. That's not going to happen. Frankly, I don't think that would be fun anymore. I don't think that people would like it.
What if they were like, this game actually has to be played docked, and you take the Joy-Con out and you have to fucking spin it.
Oh no.
I was gonna joke and say you had to play it handheld and you just have to do this the whole time.
Oh my god, gyro controls. Wonderful. Sure. Well, now that we've talked about the wonderful Pokemon spin-offs, let's talk about our dream mainline games. Specifically, yours, Tucker. I'm gonna hand you I'm gonna give you the rest of the show. Tell us about your dream Pokemon game.
Now, here is the other area, alongside Gen 6 and 7 being my favorite, that I feel like I differ from most people in terms of why I love Pokemon and which elements of the games I like / dislike. And here's the main crux of my dream Pokemon game, is that it's as little about battling as possible. Because I do not care about battling in Pokemon games. It is a means to an end. It is a means to me getting these goofy guys and putting them in my PC, which is the part that I love. And I do have to say, they spoke directly to me with both Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet, which are much less about battling than previous games. It makes it much more optional, avoiding the wild battles if you want to. Obviously, Legends is about that collecting, and so my goal with a dream Pokemon game of mine is to mix Legends ZA with some elements from other similar types of games that allowed the world to feel more alive and focused more on exploration and discovery than about the battling, which is historically the main focus of Pokemon games. Um, and so I don't know if, and here's a weird touchstone. It's not a game that's come out yet, but there's a game coming soon called Flock, and it
Okay.
is published by Annapurna. It's being developed by the guys that made the games I Am Dead, Wilmot's Warehouse, and Hohokum. Now, that's a litany of horseshit indie games that you probably haven't heard of.
I have not. Also, I love that half of this game is a game that hasn't come out yet.
Sure. Yes. I mean, that is a very unique thing that's been drawn into my mind. I've been thinking about this previous to Flock existing. I'm just using this as an example. Now, what Flock does, which I think is very interesting, is that you're out in the world, you're collecting these little funny bird guys, which already I'm in. That's all you got to say to me. I'm buying your game. But that they are each type of little bird guy that you can make join your titular flock has a different role to play in the environment, and you have to do little puzzles and find them in specific ways. And one that always jumps out at me is a little bird that looks like an apple, and it's hiding in a tree looking like an apple amongst other apples. And for me, what I always wanted Pokemon to do, and it's trended more in this direction, and I'll give the series credit where credit is due, but to have each Pokemon fulfill a specific niche in the environment and to have it feel unique to be approaching that specific Pokemon when you want to catch it. Now, because in basically every other previous Pokemon game, every Pokemon is equally as accessible in that you walk into the grass and it shows up. It's not unique to find most Pokemon. Now, of course, there are legendaries. There's Feebas, which you can only find in a few spits of water. There are some Pokemon that have unique ways to encounter them, but they're so few and far between that it's an anomaly. But I as a 3D, more open Pokemon game that has Pokemon fulfilling specific niches within the environment, I think that would make for the exploration and the reward of finding a Pokemon in one specific area because it makes sense, because it fits in with this kind of flower and this kind of rock environment. And Geodude, you actually have to set off a bomb in the rocks or whatever, and then a Geodude will come out because it was buried in those rocks. Or that's the kind of thing that really tickles my mind. Of if Pokemon felt different to find, that would just be so much more exciting, in my opinion.
So, is the crux of this game the end goal being collecting and catching them all, because you said that you like the PC stuff, or is it more about these adventures but the story is not focused on battling, and even the adventures don't have to be?
I think that the collection is the main crux, and
okay,
credit where credit is due. That's what Legends Arceus is, and that's why I love that game.
I also love that game.
The way that they went in and they retooled what catching meant, in terms of you're catching a lot of Pokemon. You can catch them without battling them, which had obviously had kind of been introduced in Let's Go. But you're wanting to catch multiple of them to unlock different elements of the Pokedex, to learn about them a little bit more. That is a perfect example. Now, I will say, I've been thinking about this from before Legends Arceus came out, so I'm not stealing this from Legends Arceus.
No.
He wants it on the record. Folks.
Would you say that it is kind of like a, in the mainline Pokemon games, we take the role of a Pokemon trainer, in the Ranger games it's a ranger. Would you say that this is almost a Pokemon researcher game?
Absolutely, yes, because that is kind of the role that I fulfill in my dream Pokemon game. But when I'm playing Pokemon games, I don't see myself as the guy that wants to be the very best and that wants to defeat the Elite Four. Of course, I do that incidentally because there's no way to do the game otherwise. Which to that point, I don't think that there would be gym challenges as the main battles of this game, or the main story points of this game, because that in my opinion just feels kind of rote. I mean, even when you think about the island trials in Gen 7, they're gym battles. Of course, there are more environmental puzzles, which I think are a nice change of pace, but they're gym battles at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so I think like steering away from that, I think would really give it a different feel. Again, Legends Arceus kind of did that. Those the what are they called? What are the big glowing yellow ones called? Do you guys
Totem
remember?
Pokemon. No,
That's
Totem
Gen
is the alpha Pokemon.
the alpha
No,
Pokemon, yeah.
no, because
No,
alphas are
those
like
are the ones with red eyes.
the ones that you could catch.
I don't remember the terminology, dude, but
They have specific name, yeah.
Because
But
Titans are from Sword and
Titan-
Shield, or Scarlet and Violet are the Titans. So what are the?
I don't know.
glowy
Titan
Pokemon.
Yellow Pokemon.
You're talking about like the main bosses, like
Yeah,
the
the
Scyther and the
five-
Lilligant and
yeah.
the yeah.
What's Cleavor? But you know,
Frenzied?
sure, yeah, they're. I guess
That's the
they're-
first word that popped up.
Yeah, whatever.
They are all, yeah.
I know what
they're
you're
all-
talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I keep asking me questions and we'll flow.
So-
So I actually have one. Are there like the same amount of battles or significantly less, or are they just optional?
Okay, that's kind of what I was going to ask. If it was
Cool.
just wild, or if there wasn't, like, there was wild battles, but not like a gym challenge.
I think that battles could certainly be a part of it, but I think, in my opinion, having it kind of like it is in Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet, to have that just be something that you can do if you want to, if you enjoy that element of the game, if you want to train up your team, that's fine.
Yeah.
Fun, go for it. But I think that the collection being the thrust of the story, as it is in Legends Arceus, but the thrust of the story and the progression, I think, is what really entices me. And I will say that I think the reason why I think this game would be distinct from Legends Arceus is one area I think that Legends Arceus could improve on is having the open areas be smaller and more specifically designed, because a lot of Legends Arceus kind of feels auto-generated at a certain point. It's like, yeah, this is a big field, yeah, it's a mountain, like it's not particularly interesting. There's some landmarks, but few and far between. And I think that part of what makes the more linear Pokemon routes in previous games, and I will say especially for me in X and Y and Sun and Moon, is that they feel very curated. Is that the camera sweeps in certain moments, and this is the route that has this kind of flowers, and this is the route that has a bunch of snow on it. They feel very distinct. And if it were more open areas, of course, you're exploring in these areas, but small enough to have them feel distinct and curated, I think that would be a really interesting balance and allow specific areas to be like, oh, that's where I find this Pokemon, and it's because of that reason, and there's a landmark that reminds me that that's where Mamoswine is, or whatever it is.
Gotcha. So, looked it up. Noble Pokemon. That's what we're thinking of.
Thank you.
Noble. What's funny about what you're describing in it is I almost like a character that's coming to mind for me is like Bianca from Black and White, because like I remember a lot of people being like, wait, if she sucks at training, why is she becoming the professor's, like, she keeps using the phrase bodyguard? And people are like, well, no, there's a difference between just she can handle herself in a wild battle, but she can't in a trainer battle. And that's correct me if I'm wrong. It's your game, but it sounds like almost like, yeah, the battles are going to be more serviceable because you kind of have to have some type of combat in a video game or most games, but that it's, I know we said it's not going to be the focus. But is it also going to be specific about your researching habitats?
I mean,
can I jump in one, because I have one more thing about the battling real quick. Would the battling have a gimmick or a gimmick like equivalent or adjacent? Because I know, because like in Arceus they at least had like the fast and the strong style or whatever.
I don't think that's necessary, because I think that part of what some people didn't like about Legends Arceus, now I actually appreciated this, but is that the strong and fast styles made it feel so different from other Pokemon combat that
I loved it.
I personally think that it made it a lot snappier and fit that game a lot better. But I think that I wouldn't have really cared if it was normal Pokemon battling and you didn't have the styles. Like,
that's a good point.
I wouldn't have thought about it. I wouldn't have been like,
sure,
this needs styles.
It's missing something. Yeah, I would. Yeah,
the styles.
I'm partial to normal kind of Pokemon battles. I like the fast and strong style stuff because it wasn't just let's figure out what new forms we can give
course,
Pokemon.
Yeah,
Let's give them hats, you know what I mean?
it was a subtle enough change that also made sense, and it wasn't just like a forced thing like that.
Yeah.
The style change to me also felt like how in the anime they'd be like quickly dodge and then do you know what I mean? It's like you're kind of giving them multiple commands at once.
It did kind of feel like that, yeah, and I love that about it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
do a barrel roll quick, cartwheel.
I think that obviously we're talking about complete dream game.
Sure, of course.
Want the battles to feel a little bit more contextual in the world, and by which I mean, I think that the turn-based nature of Pokemon games can kind of make them feel very artificial. Even in the games like Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet, where you're in the environment, your Lechonk or whatever is just sitting there for as long as you want. So if maybe there was a, I don't know, like Final Fantasy VII style active time battle where you have to do it on a timer, so that's a little bit snappier. And in my mind, I think what would really make it more interesting is if there was a greater variety of Pokemon that could attack you. So if they were like, of course, we've had double battles and horde battles and things like that, but I think that those, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't really happen in Legends Arceus or Scarlet and Violet.
I'm pretty sure they got left behind in the 3DS era.
Yeah. So bringing that back and having, if you attack a Starly or whatever it is, and then it calls its friends in, and you have to battle 3 of them at once, or if you can double battle against 4 or 5 of them or whatever, I think that having that sort of flexibility and sort of the just like fast and furious nature of all sorts of Pokemon coming in and out of battle, and you being able to send out multiple Pokemon, I think that would give the combat a little bit more of a like a dangerous exploratory feel, which I think was so interesting in Legends Arceus when a Pokemon just could attack you, and I think that would be something I would definitely carry over of strong Pokemon feeling intimidating because they can actually do damage to you,
hurt you. Yeah.
First time in my life I ever felt fucking intimidated by a Parasect.
Yeah,
dude, when I first saw that Rapidash, I was like, nope.
Yep.
No, like, Rapidash is like a horse on fire. I'm like, yeah, no, I wouldn't want to screw with that.
That was like the first one you see with the red eyes, and he's massive.
Yeah. The first one I saw was Snorlax, and I just watched him like hyper beam a Squirtle off the face of the planet or something. I mean, like it was like I was like, oh no!
And then Squirtle fainted, obviously. You know.
The way Snorlax turns in that game, like if you're trying to sneak past a Snorlax, he turns so much faster than you'd think, and he's there for a kill.
And then the glowing red eyes. I mean, it was horrifying.
Yeah,
100%. Anyway.
I love that concept though, especially just like a tandem mouse calling in all the homies, be like, "Uh-oh, I gotta get out of here."
Tandem family reunion.
It's just a line of them cracking their knuckles.
They're like, "You came to the wrong neighborhood, motherfucker."
And that was
don't talk to me or my son 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 or my daughter or my son ever again.
And that was one cool thing that was actually kind of implemented in Sun and Moon is when Totem Pokemon could call for help, and then they would just summon, like, you know, Totem Gumshoos would summon a Yungoos or whatever. You're like, oh shit, now I gotta deal with 2 of them. That's something that they left in that game, which I think that like I would want a Pokemon game that combines a lot of these ideas from previous Pokemon games: double battles, triple battles, horde battles, the summoning the extra help battles. If all of those were mixed and matched to where anything could happen in these battles, I think it would help it feel a lot more dynamic.
Like rather than being
and it makes
types,
sense environmentally too, like you said.
Yeah,
So,
they're all kind of options available in whatever a battle is. Now, so you're talking, I know a little bit about the horde battles from Sun and Moon, or the, I forgot what they call, like the helper one that they'll call in. But a funny little thing about that one was that because those games weren't open world, but they wanted to make it like, oh, the Pokemon are calling in like their
SOS
parent
battles.
or the bigger SOS battle. Yeah. Like they're trying to call in like the bigger guns. Like you could get like a level 3 Salamence in those games because a Bagon will call in a Sal. Would you have that, or would you be like, nah, screw it? If it's the beginning of the game and you scare a little critter and he calls in his little level like 60,
his older brother.
Yeah,
I'm sure there'd be like ratios to how like likely that is to happen, but you know, it could happen.
I mean, why not? I think that part of the like danger of exploration that was so interesting in Legends Arceus, but I think also somewhat in Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet, is that you could find high level Pokemon and battle them if you want to, and that's not like, you know, something like Xenoblade does. It's something that I personally engage with because I'm like, I don't really care to go face that Machamp that's wandering around the first part of this area because he's gonna whip my ass, and I'll just steer around him. But I like the fact that it's there as an option. And I think that when we're talking about it in the context of happening occasionally without you planning on it, that could be a cool way to add an extra touch of stakes that doesn't happen all the time, but could create some fun moments.
Sure.
Yeah, I like it.
There's one other element, though, that I think I want to combine the exploratory, more open nature of the post-Gen 8 Pokemon games with one of my favorite elements of previous Pokemon games, which is, and especially in Sun and Moon, which is the Metroidvania-esque element of HMs from previous games, or the ride Pokemon from Sun and Moon, that allowed you to revisit areas and explore things at a different pace. And it created like, you can connect a route together by adding the boulders for Rock Smash, or climb later in the game in Gen 4, whatever it is. I think that if we had that kind of Metroidvania-esque style map that was able to become interconnected with these different pathways that are, again, designed, I think I just love Metroidvanias. I love unlocking things. I love connecting the map together, creating shortcuts. And even though I think that HMs were, now in retrospect, poorly implemented in those pre-Gen 6 games.
Pre-Gen 6, yeah.
Yeah.
Or pre-Gen 7, because I think 6 still had them, but they were very, like, not necessary.
They barely mattered, yeah. But I think Gen 7 did a great job at, you had ostensibly HMs where it was surf and it was rock climb or whatever, but it was contextualized not around you needing to make your goddamn Bidoof have all the HMs, but that you're riding on a Charizard or a Sharpedo or a Tauros. And I loved that, and I think that would be bringing back ride Pokemon in the context of a more open world.
Hell yeah.
They did that in Legends Arceus, to be fair. But I think that we matching all these again to the idea of not what Legends Arceus did, which is, okay, Sneasler can climb and Braviary can fly, but that
God, I hate the Sneasler one.
I
hate that they put me in a little cage on its back.
I loved it. That was funny.
I hated it. But like, my thing with HMs is, even though they were poorly implemented, I also feel like in a way they were poorly removed, because I like the idea that it's my Pokemon helping me navigate the world. I just didn't want to have to take up a move slot for them to do so.
Well, while I agree with you, I just remember really loving that they made a change at all. You know what I mean? I was finally!
As a quality of life thing, like, absolutely, would I take the way we're doing it over going back? 110%.
Yeah. I think maybe a way to kind of alleviate that and maybe make that experience of using those more personable to like your team and your Pokemon is to have, obviously in previous games there are sets of Pokemon that can learn specific moves. If there are just enough of them to where they can reasonably animate a set of Pokemon doing each of those moves, to where you say, okay, when I want a Rock Smash or I want Cut, it's going to summon the Pokemon that can use that of my choosing from my box, and then it'll do the move.
Almost like a passive ability. Like,
yeah, but you get to choose which of your Pokemon is the one using that move, and obviously it would have ultimately the same effect. But I think that it would be cool to be able to see the multiple Pokemon doing that, and because I mean, obviously, like, previous games, you're flying or surfing, you're just on like a black blob Pokemon. Like, what is that?
Yeah.
That's not a Pokemon.
You're on. I think Gen 1 looks like Kirby. No, Gen 1 is like the Lapras, and then like,
I thought one was like a Whalmer or something like that, like a small Whalmer.
Gen 3 and 4s look like you're on like a little Whalmer, and then there's one where you kind of look like a little Kirby dude.
I do like the idea of like a little idle animation where you like take off your bag, unzip it, and grab a little Pokeball out and throw whatever Pokemon you picked to do said move. I think that's kind of cool.
But, yeah, or if there's multiple ways to do it, like, okay, yeah, I have a Scyther, so I could cut this tree, but I also have like a Houndour, so I could just burn the fucking shrub down.
That's kind of cool too. But you start a forest fire.
Squirtle! Pokemon Rangers are fucking arresting me, bro.
You're in jail.
They're like, did you not see the Smokey the Ursaring billboard that said only you could prevent forest fires?
Yep.
Burn down a shrub, and then you suddenly see 3 stars appear in the upper right-hand corner. Like, oh no!
Sorry, that's really funny.
Oh.
Sorry, Tucker.
I want that kind of ridiculousness. That'd be fun.
Does this game take place in a specific region?
Good question.
I guess I would hope that it was a new region. in my mind, this is the next mainline Pokemon game, and of course, it's very different, so that's unlikely. But I think that part of what makes a new region to me so exciting is the idea that you can stumble around any corner and see a Pokemon that you've never seen before, and that's what was so fun about, I think, especially Sword and Shield, because that was the first Pokemon game where new species were in the overworld. And so when I got Sword and Shield and they hadn't revealed Rookidee and Nickit and Thievul and these Pokemon that are early on, and I'm walking out there and I'm seeing a Pokemon I've never seen before in my life, and it's just there and I can walk into it. That's one of the, I mean, it's a small moment, but one of the most magical moments of my Pokemon experience of just like, it's just there. And it's a guy, and I don't know what it is. I'm gonna go run up to it and see what it does.
100%.
So, and I think they've done a decent job with Legends Arceus of adding some new Pokemon, whether that is new evolutions or new forms, to make it feel a little bit fresher. But Dream Pokemon game, it's a new region. Most of the Pokemon are new, so that when you're exploring this, you don't have the innate set. Okay, I know where I'm going to find a Magikarp. It's going to be in the lake, and I'm going to use the fishing rod, and that's going to be it. Or I know I'm going to find the Geodude, and it's going to be a Geodude, and I know what a Geodude looks like, and I know how to evolve it. Part of what makes a new region so exciting is that even if, okay, it's Roggenrola and not Geodude. Yeah, okay, those are largely similar at the end of the day, but they're not the exact same. And Roggenrola evolves into Boulder at a slightly different level than Geodude evolves into Graveler. And so there's that air of mystery. And sometimes, of course, different evolution techniques can kind of spice things up a little bit. But definitely I would want it to be in a new region with a large set of new Pokemon to match the specificity. And actually, I will draw back in Gen 7 here. I think one of that game's biggest strengths is the new Pokemon that they chose to add feel very specific to the Alola region. And so many of those Pokemon are contextual to different areas. Passimian and Oranguru can only be found in this area. Sandygast is only on the beach. Wimpod is like running between the little holes. The Oricorio can only be found in these fields of flowers in this area on this island. That's part of the reason why I love those games so much. Is it's not just, okay, we added Pidgey and Pidgey is on most of the routes. It's Oricorio, and you got to go to this route, and these are the flowers that match that color of Oricorio. That's pretty cool because it makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
And so I think actually, Sun and Moon are probably what inspired me to come up with this all that time ago, because the way that like Wimpod would be like running between the little holes, and you had to run into the Wimpod that was on the screen. That was the first time they'd done anything like that, and I was like, that makes Wimpod. I mean, I don't like Wimpod that much. Like, that makes Wimpod way more interesting than almost any other Pokemon encounter, because Wimpod does that. It doesn't do the same thing as every other Pokemon that is walk up to you in the grass that is every other Pokemon before that.
It was one of those things that it made it feel more like alive, like you're finding animals in their natural habitat, which I think was before, prior to that point, like a kind of sort of missing. And I like this. I really like the emphasis less on being going out, being the very best, and more of just kind of observing the world around you. Which leads me, of course, to one question: is there a path to where I can interact in this game purely to draw a Pokemon like my boy Tracy?
Why not?
What's funny about that is I was thinking, I was like, oh, if you want to see them in their natural habitat, that reminds me a lot of like Pokemon Snap. And I say that in like a positive way, especially new Pokemon Snap, where not only are the graphics gorgeous, but like some of the interactions they have between Pokemon are insanely like detailed and thought out. But like this would be more research than it is, oh, I'm taking pictures or sketching. Do you see like the player character being able to have any sort of different goals or possibilities or paths, or is it like, no, there's only one way to play the mainline games, and that's to be a gym challenger, so in this one you have to be a researcher?
Real quick, guys, I need to let my dog out, so I will be right back. Please continue.
That answers that age-old question of who let the dogs out. It was Austin.
Austin did it the whole time. Somebody told Snoop.
What was the question?
Oh, just like if your player character could do other things, like be focused on photography of observing them in their habitat or sketching them.
I think one of the things that has made other Pokemon games feel distinct is when there are the side options for like adding a type of guy that you are to like the gameplay. You think of contests in Gen 4.
Contests are, I think, the most fleshed out
Oh, definitely.
other thing you can be.
Yeah. Or even actually, I don't know if you even remember this, but your idea of incorporating Pokemon Snap style mechanics into a mainline game, that was done in Ultra Sun and Moon with the very contextual, very specific, but photograph segments where you peer between the two buildings and the little Meowth, whatever peeks out of the building, you take a picture.
That does sound familiar.
That was in that game, and it's very interesting that was only done there. I think again probably because those were designed areas. They could design a thing where a Meowth pops out, because that's an area that they knew was going to be there, and every player would see. But yeah, I guess I don't really care if there are other ways that you can do your trainer or not. That came out wrong. Make your trainer go or not. Because for me, obviously, dream Pokemon game, I'm just focused on, I want the Pokemon experience that I've always been craving, and it's not for me. It's not battling. I mean, I don't really like turn-based battles in general in games. They're kind of, again, just kind of a means to the end. But for me, Pokemon has always been about the collection aspect of it, the filling up of the Pokedex, the exploration, the evolving, the like lore and culture that the different regions sort of allow you to have, to the point where my Pokemon adventure in every new mainline Pokemon game I start is going for a living dex. I always go for a living dex in every single Pokemon game, and that means I'm sitting on the first route and I'm catching 3 of the bug type Pokemon. I'm putting 1 in the box in slot number 13 because I always number them, and so I leave the spaces for the ones I don't have yet, and then I have the second evolution of my party till that evolves, and I put that 2 spaces away. Like, I'm that kind of guy in my Pokemon games, and I think Legends Arceus maybe went a little bit too far with it in terms of you had
how
to
many
catch
times
so
you have to
many
catch
Pokemon.
each one of them. Yeah.
And so to the point where like I didn't complete the Legends Arceus Pokedex because I'm like, if I want to complete the Starly Pokedex entry, I got to spend 20 minutes just doing Starly, and I don't want to do that. So I think that there's a balance in terms of how far Legends Arceus went in terms of what you need to do to fill out the Pokedex entry, and my dream game, which is similar in concept of battle them in this way, approach them in this way, feed them this thing to know, like maybe you test a couple different berries on them to know what kind of berries they like. I think that the learning about the different Pokemon species is what really appeals to me, is like, what do they like? What's their environment like?
Do you see the possibility of your researcher character, like, Professor Elm studies Pokemon eggs, Professor Rowan studies Pokemon breeding, like, or evolution, I mean, like, every professor kind of has their little niche. Do you see that being maybe like side missions, or just you maybe touch on each of them?
I think probably the variety aspect, because I mean, if those elements were missing, because like even if it was like you had to choose like a class at the beginning, it's like, okay, you're going to be going down the egg hatching route, the Gigantamax route, or the Alolan Pokemon route. I don't know what I'm talking about, but I think that would be a little bit limiting. And I think the idea of being able to flow between them is part of what made Legends Arceus good in that way of, if you could make progress by just battling them. Of course, if you wanted to get complete 100%, you had to do all of it. But I like that there was the options of, if you want to reach this rank of the Pokedex entry, you can kind of do a couple different options.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't want to say it's super likely. I don't want to get your hopes up, but like with Arceus existing, I feel like this sort of concept is like more likely than ever. Does that make sense? Like,
absolutely true.
With Arceus kind of being a success, and success is kind of weird too, because like it obviously didn't sell as well as the other ones, but it's only one like game instead of 2 or whatever. But yeah, and then this one isn't as important. But like, do you envision this being like a slightly smaller map, just like more designed? Because you said with like the Metroidvania kind of aspect to it. Yeah, I was just wondering, like, size-wise, as compared to like other regions, is it just a little small, or just more detail?
It's difficult to know in terms of comparison to anything pre-Gen 8, because it's kind of hard to tell how big the linear maps are, or the route-based maps, because they're just kind of like a spidery web of different length lines. So I think that smaller, yes, than Gen 9, especially, and Arceus, because I think both those games, even though I love both those games, I think they suffered from literally having so much space. Was so hard, not only on the hardware, but the development time of Game Freak, who hadn't made games like that before, that the games visually and technically, and in some ways design-wise, suffered for adding so much scope that it did not allow for the polish that, I mean, think about how polished Sun and Moon are, especially Ultra Sun and Moon. Of each area is it's specifically designed, and the colors work, and the trainers are placed there, and the camera swoops in, and like there's a little funny effect or whatever. I think that with the power of a actual home console and the design experience that comes from they've made bigger worlds, paring it back, which I think is actually what they're doing in ZA, is paring it back to a smaller environment to make it feel more curated.
Yeah.
I think
Small
that
but
would
dense.
make. Frankly, I think that would make everyone happier because we got the open world Pokemon game that we wanted. It was cool. I liked it a lot, but it wasn't the open world Pokemon game that we dreamed of because it was Scarlet and Violet, and they were kind of a horseshit mess and like yada yada.
Yeah.
And so I think that it could probably be one of the best modern Pokemon games because if they're able to pare back scope for detail, I think that would just please a lot of people more, and it probably would look better, and it probably would run better, which would certainly be a benefit.
I'm with you.
What would the art style be?
Ooh.
I think
Hyper realistic. No, I'm just kidding.
I think that like Dragon Quest 11.
Yeah,
I think that would probably be like saturated, kind of anime, but still has the open environments and trees and leaves and stuff that are a little bit more realistic. I think that is probably where I would want it to go because I think actually one of my favorite games visually is Sword and Shield in terms of the art style of the Pokemon and the color palettes. I mean, walking through some of those areas with fields of wheat instead of grass and the like moss covered stones that are like towering over it, and I think that
that one village
designs,
that the aesthetic
Opal
of Sword
is
and Shield
in
is my favorite thing about those games. Yeah.
But yeah, but I think that where Sword and Shield lacked was that there was such a disconnect between the wild area and the town / routes, which I think are some of the worst in the entire series. Like categorically, you're never gonna remember a route, like an actual route from Sword and Shield.
No, but like the one place that sticks out to me is that like little village inside the forest where I think the fairy gym is.
Sure, yeah.
But that was just more like it's dark, and so we're being lit up by the Pokemon lighting up, and like that had just a magical look to it.
Absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, I like the saturated anime color palette that Sword and Shield went for. I think that again, it didn't pan out because that was actually what most of the art style looked like in the more designed areas, which I think were weaker. But then it also didn't kind of didn't look like that in the wild area because the wild area is like kind of like gray and like
it's chugging in the wild area,
low
man.
resolution textures that are kind of just muddy.
They kind of had to make some
sacrifices.
Pulls
they
sacrifices
they tried
there.
to have their cake and eat it too, but I think both sides of that game suffered for it, and so hopefully you mix the idea of the wild area that is a little bit more open and a little bit more exploratory with the designed routes, which were okay in Sword and Shield.
Sure.
Then I think you have a nice harmony between some scope, but also they feel curated. They don't feel. I mean, there's no one area in the wild area I particularly remember because it was all kind of a mishmash of nonsense.
It's all one giant area.
Yeah.
And is there a specific story that you have in mind, or is it just vibes? Research these fuckers.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. I like stories in Pokemon games, and I think I especially like Pokemon characters. But the problem is basically every Pokemon game boils down to the same story. And so my idea of what the story would be, we have so little to work off of.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
it's absolutely fair.
I like the idea of it just kind of being vibes anyway, though. Too, it's very, very old school Pokemon in that way. Yeah,
you can kind of just tell stories in the background. I'm not saying to this degree,
and have little plot lines in. But the idea is that it's like, I'm gonna, as Jordan put it, research these fuckers.
That's the opening line.
Yeah. That's something that Legends Arceus I think also did well of the side quests that you
100%. I always bring this up. Thank you.
I mean, there's like the dueling guys that are selling things and they're kind of like competing. And you have to like bring them different things and tell the other guy no, the other guy doesn't want this. Or when a guy wants Wurmple or something. I don't know what it is. And he's scared of Pokemon, so you bring him a Wurmple, and then he evolves it later on. And I love the side stories and the side quests in Legends Arceus.
I always bring up I think it's a Drifloon who's like kidnapping kids or some shit. I'm like, that felt like very Pokemon. I was kind of into it.
Drifloon's actually an interesting example because I'd say Drifloon is one of the best examples of earlier Pokemon games doing kind of what I'm talking about. Of Drifloon has a very, very specific way that you need to find it. Friday mornings at the Valley Windworks. Now, I think that's a little bit too specific.
That's too specific. Because then if you miss it, you just go the rest of the game never seeing that Pokemon.
Yeah, but I think that like in the morning, only in these areas and only with this kind of bait, like doing that kind of experimentation, I think is what makes certain Pokemon stick out to you. Like we were talking about Wimpod and Drifloon. I think those are some of the most interesting Pokemon.
Yeah.
And it's interesting where they like combined the two a little bit. Like, oh, only certain Pokemon can be caught with honey trees in Gen 4. But honey trees suck.
Bro, the honey tree...
and you never get a Munchlax or an Apom.
No, I do not believe that Barry ADHD neighbor, I don't know his last name, no one Pokemon has last names, has both a Heracross and a Munchlax. Unless he went... my little headcanon is literally because he can't stay still, is he would just walk around the entire region putting honey on, and by the time he got back, now it was time to check who came.
At a certain point in Gen 4, I was just like, I would wake up in the morning, pop over my DS, and do my route. I would fly to this one because I know there's 2 honey trees there and check them, and then it's a Wurmple or Burmy again.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
There's got to be a better way to get a Munchlax, bro.
I think my final question is, how would you handle starter Pokemon, and if you would have them at all, really in that way, or how you would just differentiate from that?
I think that starter Pokemon. I mean, what would really be cool if it was a new set of starter Pokemon that weren't Fire, Water, Grass. I mean, I know
I would love that too.
Everyone's always wanted it to break from that. It's a tradition, but I like the idea of maybe there being 5 starter Pokemon that are of a wider variety of types. Like, it gives you a little more of a choice of what to pick from.
Fire, Water, Grass, Normal, Electric.
No, but I mean, like, obviously you can.
I would take it at this point. Small baby steps. That's how Pokemon always does it.
I mean, hey, they kind of did that with...
Just go right out the window immediately.
Let's go.
Dark.
That's what I was implying. I was like,
ice,
okay, yeah.
Poison.
Fighting poison. There you go. Pick one.
I do think that in a non-battle focused game, that them breaking the tradition
That's a good
of
point.
What starters would make
That's
sense.
a good point.
Yeah. Or even like, it like you're gonna have a selection between a water type, a grass type, and fire type, but they're Pokemon we've already seen, but they're not other starters like in the Legends game where it's like a Horsey, a Magby, and a Skiploom. Make a trio out of non-starter Pokemon.
Yeah, I mean, ideally it would be new Pokemon.
No.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
No. he said no.
Old ones only.
Because I think it's cool what they did with Legends Arceus and what presumably they will do with ZA of utilizing old starters and like mixing and matching and then giving them. Actually, here's an interesting headcanon of mine. All right, you want to hear Legends ZA?
I'm ready. Lay it on me.
Cook for us, baby.
They have been establishing through Legends Arceus and Scarlet and Violet that old Pokemon lines can get divergent new evolutions. I think there's a chance that we get normal starters, like it's Piplup, Trico, and Fennekin or whatever. But the third evolutions are not the third final evolutions that we know, because obviously Legends Arceus, it's Hisuian Samurott, Hisuian Typhlosion, Hisuian Decidueye, but we know that they're okay with adding different evolutions like Sneasler to Pokemon, and so we go even further. I think that will, regardless, I think that will be the case. Of if it's Piplup, it's not Empoleon as its final evolution. It's a something Oleon, but it's a different Pokemon.
It's Napoleon himself.
Yeah,
it's just a guy.
But
it's
also,
just a dude.
Possible that we get Colossian versions of Piplup, Trico, and Fennekin. Different designs. I think that'd be really cool. Like, start from the beginning. It's cool to have Rowlet evolve into Hisuian Decidueye, but Hisuian Decidueye doesn't look like Dartrix or Rowlet. So if there was a Hisuian Rowlet that had red leaves and then it evolved into Hisuian Decidueye, that would make a lot more sense.
Sure.
The starters for ZA, and we've talked about this a little bit in our ZA predictions episode. Check that out. But it's like, okay, well,
I will be
the Kanto starters got megas. The Hoenn starters got megas.
Yeah.
And then there's also Gmax forms for some of the newer ones. There, so it's like, who do you go with? Because
yes.
the question is, are they going to do a regional variant evolution, or are they going to give new Pokemon a mega evolution because it's coming back? Yeah. And because it's coming back, I would actually want them to redo the Kalos starters and give them megas.
It's so funny that the starters from the generation that introduced Mega Evolutions never got Mega Evolutions. Not even why?
Not even just the starters. None of the gym leaders use it, right? Yep. Like one of the gym leaders shows you how, but it's not in the gym battle.
The crew had to teach me that last time. I was like, wait, they didn't? Like, that doesn't make any sense. I was like, excuse me?
Yeah, he went, what do you mean?
We can do that?
Yep. So very fun. Is there anything else about this game that we didn't touch on that you want to bring up?
No, Give us the crazy sauce. I think we've pretty much covered it. I think that the final thing would be, I think, integrating Pokemon into towns would be really nice. And now I think that will be.
I love when I see that.
That will be done in ZA, because how the hell else are they going to do it if they don't do that in ZA? But I think that the idea of what they did a little bit of in Sun and Moon and a little bit of in Scarlet and Violet of having Pokemon around, and I guess what they were in previous games, are like, okay, someone would be walking around with their fur or whatever. I think having
catchable chokes that help you move in Ruby and Sapphire.
True. Great point. Having catchable Pokemon in towns and kind of blurring the lines between what a route and a town is, I think would be really, really cool. And so it would mean that you could find more urban Pokemon just in the towns, not in specific dungeons like the power plant in Gen 4 or whatever, but that there is a Squavit on the park bench, and you can battle and catch it on the park bench because it's in the city. It's a Pokemon.
Yeah,
it's in the city.
Make it like a chance encounter. I've looked out. There was once a fox in my yard.
Yeah,
fuck it. Give me a Fennekin in Pallet Town, man.
Yeah,
just the way you went about telling.
There was once a fox in my yard.
I think that part of what made Sun and Moon so interesting as it started some of these ideas was that there was a little bit of mixing. I don't know if you remember, but in like a couple of areas, you could like open a gate and go into a small like wild route.
I do, yeah.
And they'd never done that before, and they've basically not done it since. And I think that if there was like a central park, and you could catch Pokemon there because it's a park, that would be a really cool way to sort of blend things together a little more.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah, ever since I saw like that kind of environments in the Detective Pikachu movie, I've just wanted more of that.
Absolutely.
Clearly not like to that extreme of that, like looking that well, but like I just wanted more of that. Yeah. And anytime a Pokemon game wants to change the formula, I keep saying this, just fuck with it, just do something crazy off the wall. Like I'm always down for that. So
absolutely.
I'm down for your title.
Throw a wrench in the whole thing.
100%.
You should also throw a wrench at that subscribe button. Remember to like and comment as well. Follow Tucker. His info will be in the description down below, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.